Hello and welcome. This is lesson 1.04 for the second semester of U.S. History called Populists. Politics during the Gilded Age was a corrupt business. Those who supported a candidate expected jobs or favors in return. Businesses paid politicians to avoid regulation, but President James Garfield's assassination punctuated the need for reform. Meanwhile, farmers across the country confronted serious problems of a different nature, and many faced bankruptcy. When they organized to help one another and demand change, a new political party emerged. The Populist or People's Party campaigned to address these problems. But could a third party succeed, and what would define success? Goals for this lesson: identify characteristics of government in the Gilded Age of the late 1800s, recognize the problems farmers faced in the late 1800s, and describe the rise, fall, and legacy of the Populist Party. And we'll look at lesson resources. Don't forget to grab your reading guide and your lesson answer key. And let's begin. And first of all, look at this cartoon, a party of patches, and it says the People's Party, which refers to the Populist Party, and then you have all these little patches: Knights of Labor, Farmers Alliance, Prohibition Party, Free Silver Party. It's kind of encapsulating everything they're trying to cover there. And then you see what it says there in the little blue: platform of lunacy. So I'm guessing this artist probably is not so supportive because they're saying that they're lunatics. All right, we're going to start by reading pages 562 through 569. And those first two pages were just the first pages of the chapter, the timeline and intro. So we're going to start here. In the United States, the second half of the 19th century was marked by unprecedented growth and change. The growth of business and industry brought about new progress but also new problems, including the poverty of industrial workers, the misery of many city dwellers, the vulnerability of immigrants, and the suffering among small farmers falling into debt. In the quarter century following the Civil War, the federal government, which had grown by leaps and bounds during the war, scaled back and played a more limited role in people's lives. Pressured by powerful private interests such as the super wealthy, captains of industry and finance, government officials at all levels, federal, state, and local, did little to address enormous social problems and economic abuses. As politicians proved unresponsive to the needs of both small farmers and urban workers, ordinary citizens took it upon themselves to demand change. From about 1890 to 1920, both rural and urban America, Americans agitated for government at all levels to solve the nation's many problems. Millions of Americans did not wait for government, but took action themselves to seek solutions. Farmers organized to better their conditions, and the new political movement, populism, was born. A wave of reformers stepped forward to tackle urban problems and corruption in government and business. The struggle for reform helped address many social ills in what has become known as the Progressive Era. Politics in the Gilded Age. The reformers who emerged at the end of the 19th century were responding in part to decades of stalemate in government. After the Compromise of 1877, in which disputed presidential election results led to the deal that placed the Republican Rutherford B. Hayes in office, American politics settled into an unproductive pattern. Congress remained almost evenly divided between Republicans and Democrats. With the exception of Grover Cleveland, a Democrat who served 2 non-consecutive terms as president, Republicans remained solidly in control of the White House. Despite the intense and often nasty rivalries between the two parties, they no longer disagreed on major issues. In the decades following the Civil War, both Democrats and Republicans took a laissez-faire approach. They believed that government should keep its hands off the workings of the market economy and undertake little or no regulation of business and industry. And just so you know, laissez-faire is an important vocabulary term to be aware of. Hands off means hands off of business, no interference from the government. Although Congress did little to address the major social issues of the time, participation in presidential elections remained high, with turnout ranging from 70 to 80% of eligible voters. This high rate of voter turnout, however, did not reflect a deep engagement with policies and ideas. Rather, it reflected an intense partisanship among the American electorate, with its voters taking sides based on ethnic ties, religious affiliation, or regional concerns. Politics of patronage. Okay, where was I? The politics of patronage. In 1873, when Mark Twain collaborated with Charles Dudley Warner to write The Gilded Age, the author satirized not only the social excesses but also the political corruption of the era. During the Gilded Age, the the politics of patronage, rewarding friends and allies with government jobs and contracts, extended beyond the urban political machines to both state and federal government as well. This spoils system had been common since the presidency of Andrew Jackson. One result was that the civil service, the body of appointed non-military government workers, was filled with many unqualified people. Though many political appointees did not have the necessary experience for their government jobs, they gave kickbacks, a portion of their salaries or government-paid funds, to the politicians who had appointed them. The politics of patronage took a shocking turn in July 1881 when a disappointed office seeker assassinated President James Garfield. A Civil War veteran and experienced Republican congressman from Ohio, Garfield had complained privately of the office hunters who besieged the White House with requests for jobs. Garfield had only been in office since March and had resisted pressure from powerful senators in his own party who wanted to fill key government posts with Republican loyalists. After he was shot, Garfield clung to life for almost 3 months before succumbing to his wounds. Garfield's vice president, Chester Arthur, surprised many people when he quickly began pushing for civil service reform. In 1883, he signed into law the Pendleton Act, the first comprehensive legislation to reform the civil service system. The new law created the Civil Service Commission, which replaced the spoils system with a merit system, in which some federal job seekers were required to take competitive examinations. The Pendleton Act also barred political parties from demanding campaign contributions from federal office holders. Hard times in rural America. In 1891, the writer Hamlin Garland published a short story, Under the Lion's Paw, which explored the economic challenges confronting many American farmers in the closing years of the 19th century. In the story, the main character, Tim Haskins, sets out in search of new land after grasshoppers ruin his crops. He ends up leasing a worn-down plot owned by Jim Butler, an unscrupulous businessman who had acquired a great deal of land by purchasing at foreclosure auctions. For 3 years, Haskins and his wife worked their new farm, clearing its fields, improving its buildings, and constructing new fences. But when they finally save enough money to purchase the farm, Butler doubles the price, explaining, "It was all run down then, now it's in good shape." Haskins cries out in protest, "But you had nothing to do with that. It's my work and my money." "You bet it was," replied Butler, "but it's my land. And now you can pay me or get out." "But I trusted your word," stammers Haskins. To which Butler coolly responds, "Never trust anybody, my friend." "Why, man, don't look at me like that. Don't take me for a thief. It's the law. The regular thing. Everybody does it." Garland's story dramatizes the poverty and helplessness that troubled many American small farmers after the Civil War. One problem facing farmers was a credit crunch, a lack of available funds to borrow. Farmers needed money to invest in new equipment, such as reapers and iron plows, but credit was scarce, which made loans hard to come by. Small farmers also suffered because railroad operators and silo owners charged farmers higher rates than they charged big businesses. Also, as each year passed, American farmers found themselves competing in a growing global market. As the supply of crops outpaced demand and as competition from abroad increased, American farmers saw the value of their crops decline. To make matters worse, many small farmers became indebted to local merchants whom they relied on for tools, seeds, and other supplies. Since farmers rarely had enough cash to pay for these goods, they bought the items on credit. Merchants tracked how much each farmer owed, and farmers tried to pay off their debts after they had harvested their crops. But with the crop prices dropping, many small farmers could not make enough profit from their harvest to repay their loans. In debt to the merchants, farmers were forced to sign liens, which granted the merchants ownership or part of the next year's crop. It did not take long for this crop lien system to drive farmers deeper into debt. Farmers organized the Grange. In response to these mounting problems and with no help coming from government, many farmers were ready to take matters into their own hands. In 1867, Midwestern farmers established the Grange, an organization that sought to offer farmers support and fellowship. The Grange established cooperatives, businesses owned by a group of people or by a community, and formed not to make a large profit, but to provide affordable goods and services to shareholders in the cooperative. The cooperatives set up by the Grange aimed to let farmers use cash to buy their goods at reduced prices, thus bypassing merchants and the problems of credit and crop liens. The Grange also supported political candidates and succeeded in enacting laws regulating railroad rates. But these laws were soon overturned when the railroads put pressure on state legislatures. The Grange cooperatives then ran into trouble because most farmers could not come up with the cash to avoid buying on credit. Since cash-strapped farmers were unable to take advantage of the cooperatives quickly went out of business. The Farmers' Alliances. While the Grange failed to realize its goals, the more ambitious Farmers' Alliances achieved some successes. Starting in Texas in the late 1870s, and then spreading throughout the South and Midwest in the 1880s, the Farmers' Alliances sponsored social events for fellowship, but also focused on political action. Like the Grange, the alliances sought, though without success, to avoid the crop lien system and to keep farmers out of debt. Alliances organized farmers to buy goods at reduced prices through bulk purchasing. Acting on the long-held suspicion that banks, railroads, and merchants were conspiring against farmers, the alliances used their collective power to bargain for fair prices on services such as rail shipping and grain storage. In contrast to the dominant laissez-faire economic philosophy, the alliance movement called for an activist federal government that would take strong steps to ease the pain of small farmers, even if that meant interfering with the free market economy. As alliance leaders wanted the federal government to establish a sub-treasury system. Under this proposal, farmers would pool their crops and store them in government-owned silos, while the government would provide loans to struggling farmers. The farmers would repay the loans when prices were high enough to sell the stored crops at a profit. Alliance members also encouraged government to take control of the railroads and public utilities and to regulate rates so that small farmers would pay no more than big businesses. The alliances pushed for bankruptcy laws and other reforms to protect farmers and to put more power in the hands of the people. Beginning in the mid-1880s in Texas, African American farmers organized into a separate alliance. By 1888, the Colored Farmers Alliance had grown to a national organization with more than 1 million members. The Farmers Alliance movement spread quickly. Emphasizing equal rights to all, special privileges to none, alliance leaders created a grassroots movement that drew farmers by the thousands to rallies and organizational events. Not only men, but also women traveled to hear lectures, make plans, and try to shape their futures. Many women seized the opportunity to work for reform. As one alliance publication proclaimed, the alliance has come to redeem women from the enslaved condition and place her in a proper sphere. One woman, Mary Elizabeth Lease, emerged as a powerful voice for freedom. The daughter of an Irish immigrant parents who had fled famine in their homeland, Lease knew hardship firsthand. Through great determination, she became one of the first female lawyers in Kansas. A journalist observed of her, when she makes a statement that needs backing, she can give offhand the section, clause, paragraph, the line of the Constitution. She can quote the paragraph from this or that Supreme Court decision. In Kansas, Lease advised farmers to raise less corn and more. She stirred farmers to rebel against rising railroad rates and high interest payments. Lease traveled far and wide to deliver her heated speeches, urging crowds into frenzies as she detailed abuses inflicted on farm families. The Populist Party. The Farmers Alliance movement got actively involved in political campaigns. In the 1890 elections, several alliance-supported candidates became governors and a few dozen won seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. In 1892, alliance members established the People's Party, also known as the Populist Party. They sought to create a nationwide political movement embracing not only rural farmers, but also urban laborers, though the Populist Party remained a mostly agrarian movement. The Populist Party adopted a platform that consolidated many of the causes supported by the farmers' alliances, including greater regulation of business, government ownership of the railroads, and a national graduated income tax. In a graduated tax system, taxpayers with higher incomes pay taxes at higher rates. To win the support of urban laborers, the Populists also called for an 8-hour workday and restrictions on immigration, since many urban workers feared losing their jobs to new immigrants. Furthermore, the Populist Party urged election reforms designed to put more power in the hands of the people, including the use of a secret ballot, direct election of senators, and limiting the president and vice president to a single term in office. In 1892, at a convention in Omaha, Nebraska, the Populist Party nominated James B. Weaver of Iowa for president. Although he lost to the Democratic candidate Grover Cleveland, he received more than 1 million votes, a very respectable performance for a third-party candidate. In the elections of 1894, Populist candidates won a handful of congressional and state races. The Populists then set their sights on the presidential election of 1896. And we'll stop here for this video and pick up on the next one with free silver.